Welcome to this explainer. Look, today we're completely reframing how you think about rest. If you're highly driven, you probably view relaxation as just a passive luxury, right? Something you finally get to do when the real work is done. But the clinical data, and honestly our own evolutionary biology, tell a completely different story. True nervous system regulation is not passive. It's a rigorous, actionable, biological necessity for your longevity, your metabolic health, and your cognitive endurance. You see, human biology evolved to navigate a very specific continuous spectrum. Picture it. On one end, you've got energy mobilization. That's for surviving immediate threats. On the other end, restorative conservation, which we absolutely need to heal and rebuild. The problem is, when we're living through a massive modern stress epidemic, we're chronically stuck on that energy mobilization side. Our brains are just continuously signaling danger, which traps our biology in this state of hyperarousal and literally drains our molecular reserves. And that constant hyperarousal leads us directly into a critical concept known as allostatic load. Now, this isn't just that subjective feeling of being tired. Biologically speaking, allostatic load is the systemic physical wear and tear on your body from constantly elevated cortisol and raging inflammatory cascades. Make no mistake, this systemic overload is the absolute macro-level root of cardiovascular disease, psychiatric disorders like anxiety and depression, and profound metabolic dysregulation. Simply put, when your stress response never shuts off, your biology physically breaks down. So, to fix this, we really have to look under the hood at the control panel, the autonomic nervous system. Think of your sympathetic nervous system as your biological gas pedal. It floods your system with cortisol, driving that rapid fight-or-flight energy mobilization. On the flip side, the parasympathetic nervous system is your biological brake system. It operates much more deliberately, driving rest, digest, and deep cellular repair. Chronic stress basically keeps that gas pedal totally floored. So to survive and actually thrive, we can't just sit around hoping to eventually calm down. We have to actively, consciously train our biological brakes. And the absolute most powerful biological brake you possess? That's the vagus nerve. This is your primary parasympathetic superhighway. It literally runs from your brainstem all the way down through your vital organs. When you activate it, it releases a neurotransmitter called acetylcholine, which physically slows your heart rate, optimizes your digestion, and suppresses inflammation right at the cellular level. Having high vagal tone directly translates into a higher heart rate variability, or HRV, which, as we know, is the ultimate clinical metric for physical recovery and emotional resilience. Let's consider the neurochemistry of movement for a second. When researchers compared a 12-week yoga intervention against metabolically matched walking, they found something super fascinating. Both groups burned the exact same amount of energy, right? But only the yoga group saw a significant increase in thalamic GABA. Now, GABA is your brain's primary inhibitory neurotransmitter. It's the chemical that quiets the noise. This reveals a massive first principle. True nervous system regulation requires specific, somatic neuromotor signaling, not just physical exhaustion, to actually shift your brain chemistry. To really grasp how incredibly powerful that specific signaling is, just look at the math here. In a clinical study using transcranial magnetic stimulation on severely depressed patients, researchers measured the cortical silent period, which is basically an index of brain inhibition. After just one single structured yoga session, these patients showed a massive 34.3% correction toward healthy baseline parameters. Think about that. Just one session actively engaged those central GABA receptors to start restoring healthy neurochemical boundaries. But listen, we absolutely have to clear up a major clinical misconception right now. Not all yoga is relaxing. Sweating profusely through a high-intensity vinyasa class might make you feel super accomplished, but biologically, it's a cardiovascular stressor. It triggers sympathetic arousal and actually lowers your short-term HRV. Now, don't get me wrong, it's fantastic for metabolic health and skeletal muscle perfusion, but restorative yoga is a completely different animal. It requires zero muscular effort. It relies entirely on props to hold postures, which signals profound, undeniable safety to your brainstem. That rapidly drops your blood pressure and actively rebuilds your parasympathetic baseline. Because of this stark biological divergence, you really must strategically prescribe your movement based on the current state of your HPA axis, your body's central stress response system. If you're already completely burnt out, exhausted, running on fumes and high cortisol, jumping into a high-intensity vinyasa flow might literally just push you deeper into allostatic load. Instead, if your specific goal is to mitigate an overstimulated stress axis, you have to purposefully select hatha or restorative styles. Those are the ones that will force that biological shift into true parasympathetic dominance. We can also anchor these physical practices pharmacologically.
Take the adaptogenic herb ashwagandha, or Withania semnifera. It works synergistically with physical nervous system regulation. It doesn't just broadly make you feel chill, it actually modulates the HPA axis down at a fundamental cellular level. It enhances that crucial GABA and serotonin signaling we were just talking about and drastically lowers systemic inflammation. Ultimately, that gives your vagus nerve the biological breathing room it needs to actually do its job.
And the clinical evidence for this mechanism is highly, highly measurable. In a 60-day randomized trial with chronically stressed adults, ashwagandha was shown to lower resting heart rate by up to 10 full beats per minute. I mean, that is a massive biological shift. By reducing the brain's sympathetic overdrive and lowering that systemic cortisol, it actively allows the vagus nerve to step back in and effectively slow the entire cardiovascular system down. Now, this biological regulation extends directly into your respiratory mechanics too. Breathing isn't just some vague, calming idea. It is a direct, mechanical dial for your autonomic nervous system. Consider respiratory sinus arrhythmia, or RSA. This is a real biological phenomenon where your heart rate speeds up just a little bit when you inhale and slows down when you exhale. By consciously controlling this rhythm, you can quite literally hack your baroreflex system to force your biology into a deep state of coherence. The absolute optimal frequency for achieving this coherence is 0.1 Hz. That translates to exactly 4.5 to 6.5 breaths per minute. When you deliberately slow your breathing down to this specific cadence, your respiratory sinus arrhythmia perfectly aligns with your cardiovascular baroreceptors. This physical alignment triggers a profound state of cardiac coherence. It sends massive, undeniable vagal stimulation directly up your brainstem, signaling that you are entirely biologically safe. And the metabolic shifts that follow? They are incredibly immediate. After just a 10-minute session of Nadi Shodhana, which is a slow alternate nostril breathing technique, systolic blood pressure drops instantly. But even more remarkably, blood glucose plummets from roughly 89 down to nearly 75 milligrams per deciliter. How? Because that rhythmic nasal airflow directly stimulates the olfactory hypothalamic pathway that rapidly stabilizes the HPA axis and fundamentally alters your metabolism in real time. It's truly amazing. So, the crucial takeaway here is that you've got to choose your breathing technique based on your precise biological goal. High-frequency techniques, like Kapalabhati at 60 to 120 breaths per minute, well, they do the exact opposite. They purposefully stimulate the sympathetic nervous system. They actively lower your HRV and decrease parasympathetic tone. The evolutionary trade-off for that, you get a massive, rapid burst of oxygen and ATP production, which is your cell's primary energy currency, giving you immediate acute cognitive alertness and energy. But what if we want the ultimate climax of autonomic regulation? For that, we look to Yoga Nidra, which is frequently referred to in modern neuroscience as non-sleep, deep rest, or NSDR. Make no mistake, you are not sleeping here. It's a highly structured, conscious protocol of guided sensory withdrawal, or pratyahara. By systematically moving your attention through your physical body, you effectively bypass the cognitive verbal areas of the brain. You are signaling complete biological safety directly to the brainstem and those deeper limbic structures. Let's map out the precise physiological journey your brain takes during this process. You start out in beta, that's your normal, fast-paced, alert, waking state. As you follow the protocol, you begin to downshift into alpha, which prompts a relaxed awareness and a nice release of serotonin. Then, you cross the border of sleep into theta, where the brain deeply integrates memory and processes emotion. Finally, experienced practitioners can actually drop all the way into delta. That's the incredibly deep, slow, dreamless state of cellular regeneration and cortisol clearance, all while remaining completely, quietly conscious. The neurochemical result of hitting these deep physiological states is honestly staggering. In a landmark PET neuroimaging study, researchers observed a massive 65% increase in endogenous dopamine release in the ventral striatum during just a 45-minute yoga nidra session. Think about that. Chronic stress systematically depletes your baseline dopamine, which directly leads to burnout, fatigue, and that pervasive lack of focus we all know too well. This practice physically replenishes the brain's core neurochemical reserves for motivation and motor control. Accessing these deepest brainwave states also initiates a profound endocrine cascade. Yoga Nidra activates the pineal gland, stimulating the systemic release of melatonin. And remember, melatonin isn't just some sleep hormone, it's a uniquely powerful antioxidant that actively protects the brain against neurodegenerative cascades. By deliberately clearing out cortisol and flooding your system with dopamine and melatonin, you are literally physically rebuilding the very neural foundation that gets destroyed by chronic allostatic load. Which brings us to our final thought for this explainer. The biological data we've walked through today is absolutely unequivocal. Your nervous system is the central operating system for your entire biological reality. If you're constantly stuck with your foot mashed on the gas pedal, you are actively accelerating your own cellular decay. So you have to ask yourself directly, are you going to keep treating rest as a passive afterthought, or are you ready to use these precise evidence-based tools to actively engineer your own resilience and longevity? The choice and the biology is entirely in your hands.